Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
It wasn't until you came into the picture that the narrative changed.
A convicted killer released after a battle at the parole board. What life will look like after prison for an 87-year-old man. And a Wisconsin man says it was self-defense, but the jury says otherwise.
The jury find the defendant, Joshua W.A., guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
He didn't say. He told my mom he called her earlier that night, said that as soon as I walked in, he was going to shoot me.
Admitting to murder, but an Ohio man says the reason he dismembered his roommate is not what the prosecution makes it out to be. Plus, a big tech founder is going to write a big check amid his split with his wife of 27 years. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. An 87-year-old man convicted of killing his wife in California is now free. Law and Crime's Angenette Levy is here to explain the strange circumstances over his legal battle to win release and how Law and Crime may have helped.
Brian, we've been following William Bradford's case now for a few months. Twice in the past, the Parole Board in California said that Bradford was suitable for release, and the governor reversed those decisions until now. No one disputes William Bradford shot and killed the mother of his children, Joan Bradford, in 1988. Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney John Lewin prosecuted Bradford in 2002 and won a conviction. But the question about whether Bradford actually threatened to kill Lewin had been a hotly contested issue.
John Lewin has been a thorn in my side for the last 3 years. And there has been nothing more satisfying than to get this resolved.
Bradford's attorney, Maya Emig, has been fighting back against Lewin's claims that Bradford planned to kill him and his family for years. Lewin is a high-profile prosecutor in Los Angeles County who's made a career out of prosecuting cold cases. He's prosecuting Robert Durst for the murder of his close friend, Susan Berman. When Bradford went to prison in 2002, an inmate came forward to report Bradford confessed to killing his wife and also said that he wanted to kill Lewin. But polygraph test results from months later showed that inmate recanted the claim about Bradford wanting to murder Lewin.
It wasn't until you came into the picture that the narrative changed.
Law and Crime confronted Lewin about the polygraph results in February. He realized his error and wrote a letter to Governor Newsom saying he no longer objected to Bradford's release and really had no standing to do so.
I just wanted to correct the record. So this isn't about, my ego or his. I was glad that he was able to write a letter that effectuated Mr. Bradford's release.
Now, William Bradford, we are told, is in some sort of transitional housing that is appropriate for somebody of his age who is suffering from dementia. The parole board had determined through interviewing him and through some other information that he was not a threat to the general public. Brian?
Thanks, Angenette. Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Mike Corespondent and Terri Austin. Mike, this is a contested issue. On one hand, he's guilty, no doubt of that. But on the other, he served a long time, and he isn't a danger to anyone in what looks like his final years. What do you think of his early release?
I think it was the right thing to do in this matter. Dementia's horrible. I think it's a better thing for the prison system that he's in a more appropriate area where they can deal with these horrible mental health issues. So I think the parole board did the right thing, and I have to give the prosecutor credit at finally informing the parole board that he had no objection after the proofs. And I could understand his position. Listen, I'm a former prosecutor. Defendant, and I've been threatened, and a former defendant threatens you, you take it seriously.
Absolutely. Now, Terri, I can't be happier about this because our very own Angenette, who's here with us, helped to make this happen by uncovering some confusion as to whether or not there was a threat. What did you make of the governor not stepping in to get involved here and letting him get released?
Well, first of all, kudos to Angenette. She was able to uncover the truth, and I think that's obviously fantastic. But, at this point, the governor is doing the right thing by not intervening with the parole board's decision. If, in fact, that the parole board has decided he's not a threat to the public, and if, in fact, he did not make this threat against any attorney, then I think he should be released. It turns out that he's in this transitional home. And, in point of fact, that's probably the best thing for everyone because if he, in fact, has dementia, this is probably the best help he's going to get.
Exactly. Now, Angenette, the uncoverer of truth, what was your sense about John Lewin here?
In talking with him, and it took a few days to kind of work through this, I really got the impression that he really believed that William Bradford had threatened him and his family. And I went through the polygraph test results with him, the documents that actually came from his office. And I said, no, I think you really need to look at this. And I think it really stunned him. And I think he realized he made a mistake and he corrected it as quickly as he could. Really, the tragedy here is the Bradford children. They don't really have a relationship with their father, and their mother is gone. It's a horrible thing. And, I just wish them the best. And I'm glad we could help tell the truth here. The truth and the facts are what matter.
Yeah, Angenette, we're so glad that you know how to read a polygraph test and were able to present that to Lewin. Derek Chauvin is asking for a new trial as he awaits sentencing for the murder of George Floyd. Law&Crime is taking a closer look at the trial that the entire world watched. We'll take a look at the key moments from the trial and what comes next. Law&Crime presents Inside the Trial of Derek Chauvin, airs Friday night at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on the Law&Crime Network, which will be hosted by our own Angenette Levy. Now to Italy, where 2 American students have been sentenced to life in prison for the death of a police officer. A Roman jury found Finnegan Elder and Gabrielle Natal Hjorth guilty of homicide, extortion, and other crimes. The 2 Californians claim they did not know Mauro Cicelo Rega was an officer when Elder stabbed him 11 times in 2019. They claim they acted in self-defense during a struggle. But Rega's partner said they identified themselves as police officers. Natal Hjorth hid the knife used in the stabbing, and in Italian courts, accomplices can be charged with murder. The 20-year-old and 21-year-old said they were trying to get their money back after a botched drug deal. Elder's father yelled in the courtroom, "Finnegan, I love you," when the verdict was read. And in Florida, police rescued a missing 95-year-old woman. Julia Goodman went missing from her Walton County home in the early morning last weekend. As darkness fell, Deputy Craig Yost found the 95-year-old in the woods almost 2 miles from her home. Officers can be seen comforting the woman and wrapping her in blankets until emergency services arrived. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, a titan of big tech and his wife are calling it quits after 27 years of marriage. We'll tell you how much is at stake. But first, the verdict is in for a Wisconsin man accused of killing a Wisconsin man after deliberating for just 1 hour and 20 minutes.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Joshua W. guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
After 3 days of testimony, a jury found Joshua Ade guilty of murder for the death of his ex-girlfriend's father, James Grutnier.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Joshua W. guilty of attempted first-degree intentional homicide.
The 40-year-old was also found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder for shooting his ex-girlfriend, Rebecca Brokowski, and a family friend, John Miller. The state claimed Ade wanted to get back together with Brokowski at the time of the attack.
You need to consider that all of these victims were shot in the head with a Ruger pistol with a laser. He intended to kill them.
Ade claimed that he acted in self-defense and that the 3 people he shot were trying to kill him.
And the only thing that fits the evidence, that makes any sense whatsoever, is Joshua Ade walked into an ambush. And the only thing that I stated in my opening statement that Joshua Ade is guilty of is being the survivor.
Ade's sentencing is set for July 21st. Back with us is criminal defense attorney Mike Corespondent and Terri Austin. Terri, 1 hour and 20 minutes of deliberation. The ink on the verdict sheet probably didn't even have time to dry. Were you surprised at how quick this verdict came?
Well, I was not surprised that it was quick, but I have to admit I was surprised that it was that quick. It's one of the fastest verdicts that I've ever seen. But listen, don't forget, we had surviving witnesses, and their testimony was really pivotal in this case. The father, obviously passed away, but Rebecca, the daughter, she testified, and you could tell how much the jury might have been responding to her because she really was emotional, even though she didn't technically break down in tears. You could tell she was holding it back. And John Miller, too, the other individual who was shot, you have to remember his testimony must have impacted the jury as well, knowing that they saw what exactly happened and 2 people were testifying. So I'm not surprised that it was guilty. I'm not surprised it was fast. I was just surprised it was that fast.
Now, Mike, you're a trial guy. You work with juries as a former prosecutor and a defense attorney. What do you think the deliberation room was like here? And what about the case really stuck out to you?
Well, I think that this case was so straightforward. And the good thing about this case that made it go so quickly was the fact, as Terri pointed out, is this was very civilian, for lack of a better term, driven. There were real people involved in this. So you really didn't have a defense of law enforcement messing up the investigation, things of that nature. And I think really, Brian, we've talked about this many times. When you put your client on the stand as a defendant, you're taking a huge risk. In this case, though, it seemed like the evidence was so overwhelming, it couldn't get any worse. So whether you're found guilty in an hour and a half or 2 or 3 days, you're still doing the same amount of time.
Exactly. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, a reality star has been released on bail after being arrested on child porn charges. Plus, the trial of the dismembered roommate in Ohio will bring you the video where the man on trial admits to the murders. We're back. And now to Ohio, where one defendant is caught on camera admitting to murdering his roommate, but his attorney says that's only half the story. Michael Dixon is on trial for murdering, dismembering, and then burning the remains of his roommate, Jim Whitaker. The 41-year-old Dixon admitted to the murder, but claims it was in self-defense.
It's clear. All right, nothing in it. All right, I want you to hold. I'm going to hold the gun, okay? So if I have it, is he like this?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And then what happened? Go ahead. You can grab it. This one.
Hold it like
Okay.
that.
Okay. And it went off on this side of his face?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did he die instantly?
Mm-hmm.
Dixon said his daughter, Melody Sue, was in the bathroom at the time of the shooting, but when the 19-year-old was interviewed by police, she makes reference to Whitaker killing himself.
We figured that he just, left. Didn't say anything to anybody. Talked to his friends and they said, well, don't report him yet because he might not want anyone to know he's gone at the moment.
And did he say anything? I mean, you say that he talked about killing himself.
Well, he talked about it, but he never
Did he do that often?
Yeah.
Here to break down this Ohio death and dismemberment trial is criminal defense attorney Mike Corespondent and co-host Terri Austin. Terri, was that what we were expecting Dixon to say when he took the stand?
Well, I was expecting some type of self-defense claim or defense of others claim. I mean, what else is he going to say? He has to defend his actions. And I think that's the only thing he could say. If, in fact, he truly feared that his daughter's life was in danger, then, under the law, he has a right to try to save her life. But the real question is here, there's so many inconsistencies, and whether the jury is going to believe that or not, I think it's going to be hard for them to accept that as a real defense.
Yeah, it seems like one too many inconsistencies, but maybe there's a strategy here. Mike, word on the streets of New Jersey is that you are the top count killer. Is that what the defense is doing here? Admitting to the lesser counts, but trying to beat the top count?
I think, I hope they're more successful at it than I am at times, Brian, but I think sometimes there's a case where you have nothing else to do but just really be going to damage control. And a lot of times that's what we need to do in a case because we want to get the least sentence we can for our client. And you can lose credibility with a jury if sometimes in these situations you really say everything's wrong and basically you're saying this never happened and please forget about it. That's not going to happen. So you've got to see somewhere you can maintain your credibility and defend your client.
Do you think they maintain credibility here by admitting to some and kind of pushing back on other facts or charges, though, Mike?
I think they do as long as they're consistent with it and it fits the facts. I mean, it's always a difficult road to go down, but I think you need to do that and you need to be consistent, not just when you have that kind of theory, It has to be consistent. You can't keep changing it and throw everything against the wall.
Terri, real quick, what do you think about that, about trying to be consistent and admitting to some but pushing back on others? Is that a good strategy for this type of case?
Usually it is, but I don't think it was here. When the defense attorney was doing his opening, one of the things he said was, well, the prosecution is claiming if he's lying here, he's lying there. And the first thing I thought about, if I had been a juror in that case, was, well, of course he's telling the truth when he's talking about covering up the bodies, because in fact, you have the evidence there. So he has to admit that. But he's lying about these other things like the defense, because he really has no defense. And so the first thing he said to the police was, I don't know where he is. So I think that, the jury is going to cipher that out.
Yeah, they might be able to see right through that. Good point, Terri. When we come back, a big tech couple is headed for a big Welcome back. An Olympic boxer has been arrested for the kidnapping and murder of his girlfriend and her unborn child. Felix Verdejo Sanchez was arrested in Puerto Rico after authorities say he killed Keishla Rodriguez Ortiz and her unborn child, which she claimed was Sanchez's. Police say a witness told them Sanchez punched Rodriguez Ortiz, injected her with a syringe, and then they both tied her feet and arms with wire. A complaint claims Sanchez and the witness threw the woman into the San Jose Lagoon, and Sanchez fired shots at her. Rodriguez Ortiz's remains were found on Saturday and identified with dental records. The 2012 Olympian named El Demente, or the Diamond, turned himself in the following day. He's being held without bail until his trial. Now to Arkansas, where Josh Duggar has been released on bail after being arrested for possession of child pornography. The 33-year-old former star was released into the custody of a friend and will not be allowed to be alone with his 6 children. During Duggar's hearing, Special Agent Gerald Faulkner said some of the images found on the suspect's computer were, quote, in the top 5 of the worst I've ever examined. This is not the first time the reality TV personality has been accused of possessing child pornography. In 2015, he was accused by 5 girls of inappropriately touching them, including 2 of his younger sisters, Jessa and Jill. Duggar faces 20 years behind bars on each charge if convicted, and up to a $500,000 fine. The world's richest couple is calling it quits after more than 27 years of marriage. Terri Austin has more.
I was a little bit surprised. As you point out, they do seem unified, and even now, continually, they seem unified.
Forbes estimates Bill Gates is worth more than $124 billion. We sat down with divorce attorney Heidi Harris. She breaks down how the couple's assets could be divided.
I'm not sure that it will necessarily be a true 50-50 split. You know, when we look at the case of, the Bezos versus Scott case, that wasn't a 50-50 split.
Harris does not believe the divorce will affect Microsoft and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
They seem to have a unified front regarding the foundation's purpose and all the good work that it does. So I would once again take the way that they've handled this matter so far as an example of their ability to work collaboratively.
According to reports, the Gates did not sign a prenuptial agreement before they married in 1997. What Harris is most impressed by is how the details of the separation have been kept out of the media.
To get this done quietly and perceivably amicably, regardless of what went on, it's a personal matter, and they kept it that way, and I think that's a wonderful thing for everybody.
Let's bring in Mike and Terri one last time. Mike, seems like sparks won't fly during this divorce, as there seems to be a separation contract or like a prenup between the Gates. Is that typical in these types of cases?
I don't know. I don't know many people with $150 billion, Brian. So I mean, this just seems so, fantasy-like with all the money involved. But I'm sure that this is pretty natural in these type of wealth divorces, that everything's laid out beforehand to avoid anything down the road. And it looks like were successful according to this lawyer.
Mike, I'm surprised with a $1 billion smile like yours. I thought you'd know more people like this, but let's go to Terri. Terri, they will remain co-chairs and trustees of their foundation and committing to giving most of their money away through philanthropy. Could them working together after the divorce maybe make this process easier or harder?
I think it's going to be easier working together. Remember, they're not only husband and wife, but they're also public figures and they're accustomed to appearing in public. So I think even if they have feelings underneath, they will be able to come out in public and work together. They also have a job to do. I mean, this foundation is very important to them. They have a common goal to make sure that the foundation is successful. And probably the most important part here is the fact that there's a community they're trying to serve. They want to make sure that the foundation has enough funding to serve that community. So they're going to come out in public and they're going to be, I think, as amicable as possible. I don't think they're going to skip a beat. I think we're going to see the exact same Bill and Melinda Gates that we saw in the past.
And just really quickly, Terri, do you think that this comes from a lot of preparation beforehand? We talked about the contents of that contract in their marriage. Do you think that's why it's going so smoothly?
Absolutely. I think this prenup helped. I think that was converted into this contract. They agreed on all of the terms and they made sure they came out. Remember, they had this wonderful joint statement, the exact same wording. So I think it's going to be as smooth as possible.
Well, it's good to hear.